All right, we got to let it breathe while we get the Facebook groups in here. Hope everybody's excited and having a wonderful day on this wonderful Friday day. Got to wait for a couple green check marks before we get started. It's going to be a fun night, and there we go. Welcome in everyone to another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers. I hope you all are having a wonderful Friday, and we are excited that you are joining both Lance and myself for yet another episode. And of course, Lance, we had to push things back a little bit to get you on it. And it's good to have you back. I mean, it's been a while since I said it and just wanted to reiterate that to you. Mm-hmm. But how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. It was a long day today, but doing good, excited. Obviously, we're less than a week away from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft. Day 2 is going to be a gas with you and me running the show with Dove Valley Deep Divers, as we always do, bringing you the second and third round live coverage. I'm super excited for that. Super excited for Thursday next week, just to see how everything shakes out in the first round. Excited to be here. How are you, dude?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm really tired. I was excited that I finally got my big board and positional rankings out the other day and get through that. It was definitely a long week last week, long few days of getting that all finished up and figured out and all put together. But I pushed myself this year, did a little bit less scouting reports compared to the 250 you and I did a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting at like probably right around 50 that are going to get published this year. But yeah, it's been a fun draft process. It's been an exciting draft process, and I'm glad that we're in the final days getting down to it. But, as we hit this point, we're going to be doing a mock draft for the first round this year, not Broncos specific. Sorry, guys. So that means we are going to be talking a little bit out of the other teams, which unfortunately, Ernie Mays comes in and says, go Broncos country only, go Bo Nix for 6. Unfortunately, that means it's not going to be Broncos country only tonight, but we are going to try to speed through the other picks, all other 31 picks, and spend most of the time on the Broncos pick and have a lengthy discussion there. Yep. If time allows it. Of course, we have to get through 19 picks before it. We have David Papa Bear McIlrath coming in with the $5 super chat, which we appreciate, saying, good evening, Broncos country. Eric, Lance, and Deacon Scott. I would move up in the first for Ashton Genty. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Buckham ×3. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. And hashtag Let's Go Bo. And I guess, what do you think? I mean, I've talked about trading up for Ashton Genty a lot on the morning shows with Nick. Mm-hmm. Lance, what are your thoughts about the Broncos moving up for Bo Nix or for Ashton Genty?
for Bo Nix, we didn't have to do that. That already happened last year. No, not in this economy, not in this running back class. No, I would love Ashton Genty to fall far enough that the Broncos could go and get him. I just don't think he's going to. And if he does fall past, let's say, the Raiders at 6, the Jets at 7, the next prime position for you to be able to get him before he goes to the Bears eventually at number 10 overall would be number 8 to the Carolina Panthers. And I don't think the Broncos are willing to move on with that much draft capital. You're talking obviously 20 overall, probably 51, probably 85, maybe even a day 3 pick to get that high. Benjamin Albright said that you might have to throw an extra first to get the Panthers to fall down that far, which to me, I don't know, maybe an extra second would be more close to what I would do. But at the same time, this running back class is so good. You got Hampton at 20, who I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, but Travion Henderson, Quishad Judkins, Caleb Johnson, the handful of guys on day 2 that would be there for you. And I would much rather go in that direction than trade up for Ashton Genty this year.
Yeah, I mean, there is a belief that if the Broncos definitely want to secure Ashton Genty, they have to get to 5. They have to get above the Raiders, and they have to get above the New York Jets. Those are the 2 teams that the 7 seems to be his floor. So, and there has been some conversations about even the Jaguars looking his way. Etienne there in Jacksonville, he's on the final year of his deal. He's on that 5th-year option. I think Bigsby is fine, but he's not great, and they could really change up things with that offense. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been much conversation about it with the New England Patriots, who seem very focused on offensive line, but if they did go running back, it would make some sense to help take pressure off of Drake May. Mm-hmm. So I don't see Ashton Genty falling to a point where it would be cost effective or worth the cost to move up for it. But we know Sean Payton does love to trade up. He is very aggressive when it comes to the NFL draft. He's moved up multiple times since with the Broncos. Granted, it's all been day 2, day 3. But with the Saints, he moved up multiple times in the first round. One of them being for Marcus Davenport, where he traded a future first round pick to get up and get him. So it is definitely a tough thing to think about. It is definitely going to be a high cost if the Broncos want to do it. but I would be surprised if they actually did go through with getting that trade. Going to the chat here, we have Paul coming and saying, Eric and Lance, the draft is near. I know, and I'm so excited.
Me too.
And then we have Proud Daniel saying, thank God it's Friday. Looking forward to the mock draft. 6 days till we pick. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Bo knows. Hashtag Knicks for 6. Hashtag Bo leave. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. And hashtag Go Broncos. Oh, that's a lot. We also have here, let's see if there's anybody else in here. We have Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, good evening, Eric and Lance on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Bo Broncos. We have any others? Joe Anthony coming in. Do we trade up or stay put at 20? I think neither. I think in the end, we're going to see a first from Sean Payton and have him move down in the first round. What about you?
With you? I'm with you on that. I think that the depth of this running back class is enticing to him. I know that they came out the other day and said that rounds 2 through 4 are incredibly deep in this draft class. It sounds like that's the meat of this class, according to multiple draft analysts. And the Broncos are kind of valuing that right now. It sounds like they want to have as many darts in the mid rounds as they possibly can. Maybe even moving up in the mid rounds using those 3 6-round picks that they have. That would be a prudent idea, at least in my opinion. I think that the more darts you can get in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5 in this year's class, the better off this class is going to be for the Denver Broncos.
And then George Fox coming in saying, guys, I want to thank you both for your great work. Outlook on the draft. We all know how much work you've done. Denver Broncos for life. Hashtag MHH for life. Hit the thumbs up. Definitely. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up, leave a like, and subscribe, share, as you can see scrolling across the bottom. But George, I want to say thank you for that. I appreciate the kind words and everything. It has definitely been a long process for me. I talked about this a little bit and not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, even though that's what it sounds like. 1,189 players got at least 3 games scouted by me over the past 9-10 months. And it's been a long, lengthy process that culminated in releasing my big board and position rankings, which only have 574 players on it because I had to do a lot of time cutting out players who don't really have much of a chance based on my grades. Cutting out some of the lowest grades, the guys that are can't bodies at most types of grades. So 574 players are all not graded. They are tiered by different positions and different things you look for in those positions, as well as the overall position ranking and then the overall big board. I have that pinned on my Twitter account at Erick Trickel if you guys want to go check that out.
Great work. Ton of good information in there. The way you do different tiers and the way that you've organized players by scheme fits and stuff like that. This year, this is a tremendous document, guys. Please go check that out. He put a lot of time into it, and it's really, really well done.
Quentin Caldwell saying, can't wait. I'll probably be at a sports bar to watch the draft. Hopefully you're at a sports bar and have tuned into the Huddle live stream for it, where we will be sitting here for probably close to 20 hours over the 3 days of the NFL draft to talk about every single pick, every single player, and just give a ton of insight into guys, try to figure out why guys are falling, give our takes on why guys are falling and everything like that. Jason Bonney says, if Sean has a vision for Genty and thinks it makes us true Super Bowl contenders, then go get him. I definitely get that line of thought. Sean Payton is also the main decision maker here, but it might be a little tough to get George Payton on board with that big of a trade up that it would take to get Ashton Genty. And they have both really raved about their work relationship that they developed over the past few years. So maybe that won't be the thing. Michael Ronquillo says running back Travion Henderson won't be there at pick 51. Maybe not. Maybe he will be. I've learned my lesson, and I try as much as possible not to speak in certainties with the NFL draft because we are never certain. There was a guy a few years ago who was guaranteed a top 5 pick, and he ended up going 13th because of a video that released like 2 days before the draft. We had a guy who was expected to be a first-round pick that fell out of the draft because of a foot injury, and another guy who had the same thing happen to him because of some late legal issues that popped up. So we never know exactly what's going to happen. I do believe he won't be there, but I won't say it with certainty. Thank you, Michael, for jumping in as well. We have Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, good evening, Eric and Lance. It's going to be an exciting draft. How many defensive players do you guys think we draft? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag Broncos for life. Lance, I'll pass this off to you first. How many defensive players do you think Broncos draft?
I think they're going to get at least 3, and that's going to piss a lot of Broncos fans off. But I think they're going to tap into this interior defensive lineman class probably early. I would expect on day 2 they're probably going to draft an interior defensive lineman. It would not surprise me to see them take a linebacker to help build the depth of that room, especially with the questions surrounding Alex Singleton. I know that they just brought in Dre Greenlaw as a replacement for Cody Barton, and it's obviously an upgrade over Cody Barton. No offense to Cody, but at the same time, Dre Greenlaw is a top 10 linebacker in the NFL, and that's a big piece for this Broncos defense. And I also think they're going to add a safety. The safety room for the Broncos, for me, even with Talanoa Hufanga and Brandon Jones, they need a guy on the back end that can play with a lot of range. And to me, Andrew Makuba out of Texas is a dude that can do that, and he can still play with that physicality, running downhill, running the alley as a run support defender. And even though he's small, that physicality shows on tape, and he is one hell of a football player. I like him in Denver's defense a lot.
I think 3 defensive players, 2 or 3, I should say. So I'd probably put the over under at 2.5. I could see both of them being on the defensive line or front 7, kind of getting that defensive lineman, either a nose tackle or a 3-4 defensive end, and then kind of getting a 7 technique 4-eye tweener type, a Savion Jones, a Tyron Ingram Dawkins, guy who can stand up in a 2-point stance as an edge rusher, drop his hand in the dirt, plays 3 on sub packages, passing downs, things like that. So I could see 2 to 3. Linebacker makes sense. Just going 2 defensive linemen, 1 nose tackle, 1 defensive end also makes sense. Safety, corner, nickel corner, especially with a lot of concerns about Jaquan McMillan's ability to carry over into next year with how volatile man coverage specifically is. If you watched the episode for Broncos for Breakfast with Nick and I when Cody Alexander joined us, well, Jaquan McMillan, great man coverage, not so great in zone coverage, and zone coverage is a little bit more consistent on a year-to-year basis than man coverage is. So that's the answer to that. I think 3. I'm expecting a heavier offensive draft, depending on how many picks they end up, of course. BK seems is with the $5 notion saying James Pierce Jr. dropping a lot due to character issues. Could be a steal. Yes. I would be surprised if he goes in the first round. And one of the more stunning things I've heard about him is I can't remember who it was. One of the ESPN guys, might have been one of the NFL Network guys, came out and flat out said that out of everybody in this draft, James Pierce has the worst character issues, which is saying a lot because there are some guys who have some very serious stuff in it or had. Unfortunately, one of them is no longer going to be in the draft. Kieran Lacey, if you aren't familiar with that, ended up taking his own life. So sad news there. But yeah, it was very concerning when you hear that with James Pierce Jr. And I just don't see it when one of the comments that's being made is that Tennessee and the players on that team were much happier and better when he wasn't around. I have a hard time, Sean Payton, looking at that. He could still end up a steal because the talent is there, but you definitely need somebody to rein in that character.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's a work ethic issue from what I understand. Like he just doesn't have the drive. Like he's very talented, but toxic environment, teammate, a guy that just doesn't really work that hard, relies on his athleticism more than true technique. And I remember we talked last week, I was mixing up my players. I said Donovan Ezraku and Nick Benito were very similar. No, James Pierce Jr. and Nick Benito is who I was thinking. And they are very similar players. Why would you just double down on that type of skill set when you need to add another edge defender that has better juice against the run? To me, James Pierce Jr. is a sub-packaged pass rush specialist only. He's not going to be a starter at the NFL level, at least not in my opinion. And you already have that in Nick Benito. Why just continue to do the same thing over and over again?
Paul coming in asking, when do you sleep, Eric? Just in May? I sleep about 2 hours every single night. I wish I was joking. Let me rephrase that. Let me add to that. It's like I sleep about 2 nights, 6 days of the week, and then one night of the week, I sleep like 12 or 14 hours. Just been doing stuff like that for years. Howie R. Bear says, what I miss, just start or finishing? We are just starting.
Yep,
because to get into the show, we're starting at 7 p.m. Mountain Time now, which is 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. on the Pacific, 5 p.m. my time. And then we have here, is the man warrior out of the question? I think so. Quentin Caldwell coming in. I know I've seen Quentin and Jason talking about this guy in the chat the past like 2 or 3 weeks. talking about Cody Simon, the linebacker out of Ohio State. And if the Broncos are looking for like a fourth round linebacker to try to bring in for depth and maybe potentially take over for Alex Zinkleton, I really like Cody Simon for that kind of role. Has some issues in coverage, but really good downhill player and outside the tackles, working sideline to sideline.
Yep.
Let's see. Any other questions before we get into this mock draft here? Scrolling through the chat. Do you see any?
I got one from Adam Strange here. How about Caleb Johnson at 51? I think that this would make a lot of sense with the way that Iowa changed up their running scheme from being primarily outside zone for the past 25 years, it seems like. They switched to more inside zone, a little bit more duo in there as well. And Caleb Johnson showed that he was capable of playing in that kind of a scheme. It makes a lot of sense here with what the Broncos want to do. And he's got good enough receiving ability, though not asked to do it a lot. I think you can project a higher ceiling there for Caleb Johnson. And at 51, yeah, absolutely. If you don't have to move around and go find a Travion Henderson, maybe you don't like Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson fits well enough in this Broncos offensive scheme that I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Johnson at 51, I would like it a lot. I really like Caleb Johnson. He ended up being my number 2 running back when I ran through all the numbers to my grading system again. He ended up number 2, and Dylan Sampson ended up number 3, and then Omarion Hampton. Although I should add with the caveat, I did take out the medical stuff with Travion Henderson. Travion Henderson, if I take out the medicals, would have been a lot closer to Ashton Genty and very clearly the number 2 running back than Caleb Johnson currently is with Ashton, and how close Caleb Johnson is to Ashton Genty. So medicals really brought Travion Henderson down. But yeah, I really like Caleb Johnson a lot. I like his running style. I think there is more as a pass protector than people give him credit for because he only did it like 64 times at college. And there's a lot more as a receiver just because he didn't do it a lot. Well, I mean, part of the reason why he didn't do it a lot is because Iowa can't pass the ball. They don't have a quarterback.
Yep.
Iowa passes the ball about as well as I pass kidney stones.
There's an inside
which is not
joke
at all.
I was going to say there's a joke there. If you guys really know about us here at Mile High Huddle, specifically Tub Valley Deep Divers, and and Erick's history, there's a good story about that. I'm not going to talk about it right now. Let's get into this, dude.
Anyways, let's get into this mock draft.
Yep.
Chase Johnson has such good vision. He has the best vision in this class.
Yep.
Anyways, how we're going to do this mock draft. All right, we're going to try to be somewhat predictive. Obviously, there's only so predictive we can get. We're not in the room. We don't know exactly what these teams are going to do. So we're just going off of what we are hearing, what's going around, everything like that. That's all we can do. But how we're going to do this is I'm going to be running the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. Lance has some stuff on his thing, and he's going to give me 2 names for every single pick, except for the Broncos. For the Broncos, we're going to expand it a little bit because that's where we want the main part of this conversation to be. And I'm going to, between the 2 players that he picks, unless he misses out somebody who is getting talked about a lot, then I will pick one of those 2 players, with the exception of that. So I'm going to be pulling it up and getting things situated. So Lance, go ahead. Who are my 2 options for the Titans?
All right. So first things first, guys, NFL.com released their new NFL Draft IQ, which has a really cool tracker of players that have been talked and linked to these teams. When you get down to like the New England Patriots, there's like 7 or 8, 9 different guys that you can kind of list off. I'm going to go through this and pick a couple based on the PFF needs for these teams. So with the Tennessee Titans on the clock, this seems pretty easy to me. You got Cam Ward available, the top quarterback in this class, in my opinion, and then the top player in this class, according to Pro Football Focus, is Travis Hunter. I'm not going to give you Travis Hunter. I'm going to give you Abdul Carter or Cam Ward, Erick.
Yeah, I mean, this one's easy. It seems to be pretty much settled that the Titans are going to be taking Cam Ward.
Yeah.
So not much conversation there. I mean, Cam Ward, he's a fine quarterback. He's not a first-round player, and he's going number 1 overall. But a quarterback, that is a position that obviously gets such a boost in value. And obviously that's part of the reason why the Titans had a terrible quarterback play last year. They've been trying to figure out the quarterback solution. They thought they might have had something in Will Levis. Obviously they don't. They're going to be taking another shot, and it's going to be on Cam Ward.
Yeah, I think they should, quite honestly. The creativity that he has in the pocket, his arm strength, the what upside that he does bring is actually incredibly high. I just think there's a lot of rawness to his tape that he still needs to just continue to grow as a quarterback. Moving to the Cleveland Browns here, obviously Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter make the most sense. Shedeur Sanders is definitely an option for them here as well. But I'm going to give you the top two players on the board, dude. Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter.
For the Browns,
Yes.
they've been very adamant throughout the process that they see Travis Hunter as a wide receiver who can play defensive back. And with the way you look at that roster, they definitely need wide receiver help, and they still need somebody who can help at corner. Travis Hunter is adamant that he wants to play both. They just extended Myles Garrett. They got that deal done. If they didn't, then I might lean a little bit more towards Abdul Carter. But with where this roster is, they seem willing to pass on quarterback and wanting to trade up back into the first round to go get either Shedeur Sanders if he falls or Jackson Dart. And we're going to be talking about that here when we get to the Broncos pick specifically. So for the Browns, I think this is another one that seems you can pretty much put down in Sharpie that it's going to be Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and that makes the most sense. Obviously, with the Deshaun Watson situation there, they can still potentially even bring in, Kirk Cousins, excuse me. I want to say Kenny Pickett, but they already have him. They need a quarterback, but I think that you're going to see them trade up and try to go get a guy, whether it is Shedeur if he falls, whether it is Jackson Dart. It makes a lot of sense for them to go Travis Hunter here, and if they can get Shedeur Sanders to pair with him later in this draft, that would be a really big move for the Cleveland Browns. On to the New York Giants. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders is a big talking point here. Abdul Carter is another big talking point here if they want to help just bolster up that defense. Kayvon Thibodeau is a potential trade piece for those guys. But with Russell Wilson, with Jameis Winston in tow, like Shedeur Sanders is definitely an option here. What do you think, Abdul Carter or Shedeur?
So first off, Todd coming in says, I have nothing but great questions for you, Eric. Todd, you did say something earlier tonight that I was looking to grab, but I lost it in our chat scroll that I actually agreed with you on. So that might be a first for you and I, man. But glad to have you in, Todd. Glad to have all you guys in. And now going back to this, it seems like the New York Giants are passing on Shedeur Sanders. It seems like their intent at one point was to try to get Travis Hunter at 3 and then move up and get Shedeur Sanders later. I think they're kind of going to be betting on Shedeur Sanders being there later for them to move up and go get. So right now, I think it's Abdul Carter. They definitely need to improve that pass rush a little bit. Kayvon Thibodeau is on the final year of his deal, and there's been some chatter that they might look to trade him and don't really want to extend him and just instead replace him with somebody, and that somebody could be Abdul Carter. So Abdul Carter, that's where I really think they're going. They could still surprise, though, and go Shedeur Sanders. But again, all chatter recently over the past 2-3 weeks has been eye set on Abdul Carter.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense for them too. Like, again, moving on from Kayvon Thibodeau, saving some of that money, just continue to try to build the baseline of this roster moving forward. Just a quick question here. What do you think of the odds of them moving down for a team like the Jets, who maybe want to come and get Shedeur Sanders, or maybe even the Raiders? Is that a possibility?
No, I think all these teams that are picking in the top 10 are confident that Shedeur Sanders, if they want him, will be there for them. And I think there are a lot of teams that are getting talked about in the top 10 that are getting talked about more wanting Shedeur Sanders than they actually want, just based off of what's going around. So I don't think we'll see movement in the top 5 unless we see Travis Hunter get past the Browns at number 2. And then we could see a couple teams be willing to move up to go get Travis Hunter.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I'm with you on that. To the New England Patriots, obviously, offensive line for them is going to be a major need. They were 30th in run block win rate, I believe, by ESPN, and 32nd in pass block win rate, or maybe I have those numbers mixed up. Regardless, one of if not the worst offensive line in all of football last season. They've got their pick of the litter here. I'm going to present to you a versatile player in Will Campbell from LSU. I think he could play tackle at the NFL level. If not, let him fail and move inside to guard. And then Armand Membou, who I think is the best premier right tackle in this class. And I think he could play the left side. So, Eric, what do you think of Membou or Campbell here?
Well, the talk about these two is that Will Campbell, some teams don't have him as tackle, but those that do, they have him as a left tackle. Membou, they have him as a right tackle only. They don't believe that he can be switch sides. They have some issues with with that when they ran through drills and stuff like that, and they've seen him working on the left side. They had some issues with his technique. It's not easy to flip sides. Again, it's easier to move inside outside than it is to flip sides.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Patriots, they're going to take Will Campbell, I believe. I think that's where they settled, and try him out at tackle, and then rely on that safety net of, if he struggles there, then we can move him inside guard. Because guess what? The Patriots offensive line was probably the worst unit overall last year in pass protection and run blocking combined. They got to do something to improve that unit.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Will Campbell play that left tackle spot, slide him inside the guard. I think he could play all five, really, especially with his football IQ. He's better in space. I think he can move well enough. The length concerns are kind of there, but he did measure with 33-inch arms, so that we can argue that all we want to, but you can put him anywhere you want to on the offensive line, and he could be a premier player, Pro Bowl level player at the NFL level. I really like his tape. He was really fun to watch. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Jacksonville has a very interesting situation here because they need offensive line help. They need defensive line help. They could obviously go and target Ashton Jeanty here. This makes a lot of sense for them. We talked a little bit about Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby there, but with wanting to just add more pieces around Trevor Lawrence, it makes a lot of sense here to put Ashton Jeanty as one of the options. The other one I'm going to give you, Mason Graham, the best interior defensive lineman, a player that's been tabbed to the Jaguars for a long time now, Eric.
Yeah, so this one, there has been some Ashton Jeanty chatter here. I don't think that they're going. There's been some Armin Membao chatter here. And I think that this pick kind of has a trickle-down effect over the next 3 or 4 picks. If the Jaguars take Jeanty, then I think the Raiders take Membao, Jets take Warren. If they take Graham, then I think we get Membao to the Jets, and then Jeanty to the or Membao to the Raiders, Jeanty to the Jets. If they take Graham, well, then we're going to find out here because I have them taking Graham. They really want to boost that into that defensive line. That new general manager there, he is very much an analytics guy, and the analytics are very favorable towards Mason Graham, even though there are some, questions about his size, his length, and stuff like that for playing the defensive line. He is still a high quality player that has a high floor, maybe not the ceiling that you typically see for defensive linemen this high, but he still has a relatively high ceiling. So Mason Graham to the Jaguars, I think that is another one that you can, I don't want to say, cement it in, but you could probably put it in put it in pen at least, something that you can cross out and maybe write a new name. But I think it's probably over 50% that it's going to be Mason Graham if he's there.
That makes a lot of sense for them. And like you said, the questions really are like length and size concerns with Mason Graham, but he still wins with it, with good enough power, with good enough leverage. He's got an explosive first step. He can win side to side. Like, he's got a good arsenal of pass rush moves. Like, Mason Graham, one of the more solid interior defensive line prospects to come out this side, this high in the NFL draft, with a really incredibly high floor. You know what you're going to get out of Mason Graham, and I really like this player a lot.
Well, before we get to the Raiders, there's some questions here that I want to grab. Todd said that he had some good questions for us, so I want to grab them. But first, Kenny Kirkpatrick, sorry about that, comes in saying, great pick from a Giants fan, talking about Abdul Carter. Yeah, I think the Giants, they're in a very weird spot this year because we could see Dabble and the general manager, whose name escapes me at the moment, decide to go all in on trying to win this year to save their jobs. And if they were smart about it, they would try to do both. And I think Carter helps them do both there. Todd Ossendorf sent with the first question saying, is it running back or bust now in the first round? Lance, let you take this one first.
I don't think so. I really don't. I talked about it at the beginning of the show. This running back class is so good that you don't necessarily need to take a running back in the first round. This interior defensive line class is incredibly good as well. So there's a lot of high quality players in that particular area for the Broncos. I mean, you've got Walter Nolan could potentially fall there. Derek Harmon is a player I like a lot there. TJ Sanders is potentially an option. Tyleik Williams is potentially an option. They could even shock everybody, and let's say Jihad Campbell falls all the way to the Broncos at number 20 overall. You've got Jahdae Barron as a potential option. Malachi Starks. I think that the defensive side of the football needs to be addressed more for Broncos fans. And that, to me, seems like a better way to go, and then attack this running back class in the second round.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's running back or bust. I definitely think that it's running back or defensive line or bust in the first round. That seems to be the one of the two ways that they want to go. Derek Harmon could be an option. Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, all these defensive linemen. They, with the press conference yesterday, George Payton and Sean Payton have talked a little bit about the defensive line. Defensive line is very obviously a need on this roster, even though it looks good for this year. With the starting unit, the depth is extremely questionable after you get past the top 5 guys or top 4 guys. Sorry, excuse me. And then you also have so many questions for next year that have been talked about so much with over the different shows that I've been on and even on the different Friday nights. But I think it's running back, defensive line. I think that's going to be the 2 main priorities there in the first and second round. Tight end could still be up there as well. More so second round than first. Todd Ossendorf with this other question saying, are the Broncos in a win now mode, or might our Super Bowl window be open? Lance, I'll let you take this one first as well.
I think they're on the cusp of being able to open that Super Bowl window, but not yet. I still want to see more growth out of Bo Nix coming out of this season. We still need to see some more improvement from the offense as a whole. If they can bolster the defense and continue to just have that high-flying, impactful, big play defense on the backside, that would be really incredible to see. I think they're in a competitive window, but not quite a Super Bowl competitive window, if that makes sense. I think they're going to win 10 games at least again this year, go back to the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game. But until I see more from Bo Nix specifically and the offense as a whole, then I'm not going to say quite a Super Bowl window yet.
Yeah, I'm going to go back real quick before I get to that one. Michael Davis saying our defensive line was a weak link in December. We couldn't stop anyone.
Yes.
Yeah, teams figured out how to handle the Broncos defensive front and how aggressive they are. They double teamed Zach Allen and dared everyone else to beat them on one-on-ones, and we struggle. And then Broncos struggled to do that. They need somebody as a nose tackle who can eat up space and demand double teams. They don't have that. DJ Jones was a solid run defender, but he's been highly overrated as a run defender by Broncos fans. Still good, don't get me wrong, but he's a 1.5 gapping nose tackle as a run defender. And when teams would double team him, as we saw against the Bills, well, they were able to just shut him down and hold them out of the game. And it had a trickle out effect where it impacted what Zach Allen and Jonathan Franklin Myers could do. It impacted what Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper could do. And the linebacker play off also was absolutely atrocious and didn't help out the defensive front at all. I think going back to the Super Bowl window or win now mode, first steps first, playoff win. I don't think the Broncos Super Bowl window is open right now, but I think they're extremely close to opening it. They still need quite a few pieces on this roster. They need somebody who can help on that run defense with the run defense on the defensive line. They can use another pass catching weapon at tight end and or wide receiver. They can use 2 weapons out of the backfield, 1 rushing and 1 receiving, or one who could do both. They also can use some additional depth on their defensive side of the ball at multiple positions. And then the biggest thing too is that when you look at the status of the roster, it's good for this year, but you have so many impending free agents next year at critical positions and so many and a couple inflated contracts on the offensive line that you're going to have to be looking at, that you got to address those before you can really capitalize on the Super Bowl window. I think they're a year away from the Super Bowl window being open, but they are getting really close to it. Just need those few last pieces for it, and then really go all in on maximizing everything around Bo Nix on his rookie contract. And that is next year. And adding to that also is the Russell Wilson dead cap hit. That comes off the books after the season. That's going to help open up that window because it's going to add so much funding, a salary cap space to be utilized when it comes to free agency. Now, getting back to this mock draft, we're on the board with the Las Vegas Raiders. Who are your 2 guys for me to pick from?
Well, this is really easy. We've already mentioned the top 2 players that I believe that the Raiders are going to be targeting here. It's either Ashton Jeanty or Armand Minbao. One of those 2 has to be the pick here, dude.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Ashton Jeanty talk lately, but it's been a back and forth. Ashton Jeanty, Armand Minbao, which one is it? When you look at their unit on their offensive line, they still need a lot of work, and they really need a right tackle. And Ashton Jeanty, he is really hard to take down, so you can kind of cover the issues with the offensive line a little bit. Then you go to the general manager head coach competition. You have Spytek, who is very much a positional value analytics type guy, and Carroll, who has, won Super Bowls with that heavy run, that powerful run defense or powerful rusher. Never really had an outstanding offensive line, but always made his offensive line work there in Seattle. And we've also seen how much that helps Geno Smith. That said, talking with a bunch of Raiders guys, they're saying that the pendulum has swung back to being Armin Membao and off Ashton Genty. I think it's 50-50, maybe 60-40 here, but Membao is where I'm going for the Raiders. Although, of course, if it was Genty, not surprised at all. It's between these two, I think.
Yeah. Do you think Membao can flip over to the left side if Colton Miller continues to fall down? I'm not saying fall off a cliff here because that's not really accurate, but he hasn't been nearly as good in the last 3 seasons as he was as a younger player.
No, talking with people, they don't. I haven't talked to anybody who believes that Membao can flip sides. They've all had issues with him, and I kind of talked about that a little bit with the Patriots pick as why I went Will Campbell over Membao. Full expectation is that they'll extend Colton Miller. They're just not going to be talking about it publicly, and they're not going to be focused on it right this second.
Yeah.
That's probably going to come. Probably a similar timeline with the Broncos. We're probably going to see an extension happen with Colton Miller sometime right before the season starts, sometime during August, maybe early September.
That's fair. Let's get to the New York Jets here because we're at about 35 minutes and we got a handful of picks before we can even get close to the Broncos. To me, this is really easy. I think Ashton Genty makes a lot of sense for the Jets here, but also on the other side of that, they could use another pass catcher in this offense, whether it's Teteroa McMillan or Tyler Warren. I think McMillan makes a lot of sense as a pair with Garrett Wilson. So I'm going to give you Teteroa McMillan and Ashton Genty as your top 2 options.
Yeah, to cover this quickly, there's been a lot going around about the Jets trying really hard to trade Breece Hall. There was also that report that came out about 2 weeks ago about if Ashton Genty is there for the Jets at 7, they'll take Genty and try to trade Hall. They've already been trying to trade him. They've already opened those lines of communications. There's already teams interested. Genty is here. I think they end up pulling the trigger for it sometime either after the first round or sometime during day 2 to trade him, get some picks for him, and then work on, using the depth of this class, that middle area range of this class to build up the rest and going Ashton Genty here with the 7th pick.
What do you think is going to be like the target in terms of draft capital that the Jets would be looking for if they did manage to trade Breece Hall? I was listening to the radio. I'm not going to say who said it. They were saying that they would potentially be willing to trade number 20 overall to the Jets to get Breece Hall. I think that's a little bit insane. I think a 3rd round pick is better. What do you think in terms of draft capital for Breece Hall, just quickly?
Yeah, no. Unless it's early day 3 pick, like the 4th round pick, no. You're talking about a back who's already had a major injury in his career, already has a lot of miles on his career.
Yeah, that happened in Denver too.
Already has a lot of miles on his career and going to have to sign to an extension. No, definitely not 20, definitely not a 2nd, definitely not 85. And Jason Bonney saying, think about it if you're Jacksonville. Is there really a huge difference between Graham and the next best defensive tackle? Whoever they have 2nd, is it crazy for them to entertain training back? Yes, because there is a big gap between the 2.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a bigger gap between Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant than there is Mason Graham and Walter Nolan, who is defensive line 2, in my opinion, and then Derek Harmon's defensive line 3. But yes, there's a significant gap. You're talking about a true blue chip top 5 style player in Mason Graham, whereas Walter Nolan maybe fringe top 10. I have him as a top 20 pick. Derek Harmon is a top 20 pick as well. But the gap between those 2 guys is pretty significant, at least in my opinion.
You have a very clear-cut top 10 prospect, even in this class. I mean, even in most classes, Graham is a top 10 prospect.
Yep.
He was talked about last year as a top 5 pick for this year, and his play didn't drop off.
No.
Guys around him, Kenneth Grant, some of the Josiah Stewart, some of these other defensive players there at Michigan, they helped benefit from what Mason Graham was able to do. The rest of the defensive line, they're 2nd-round grades at best that are going to get pulled up a little bit because of how weak the 1st round is. Mm-hmm. There is a significant gap there. Bigger gap than Genty, Warren, Loveland, McMillan, all the top guys at their positions than the next group of guys, where there are a lot more options as well. And while, yes, there are some concerns about his T-Rex arms. That is why his ceiling may not be as high as a guy like Walter Nolan's. He has the highest floor of all these defensive linemen. At the very least, you're getting a high-quality starter for him that will consistently make plays for you, even with the T-Rex arms. Now, on to the Panthers.
All right. So for the Carolina Panthers, the talk is defense for Carolina. I think they have a needed wide receiver here as well. According to Pro Football Focus, they do. Teteroa McMillan makes a little bit of sense here, but I'm going to give you 2 defensive players. The aforementioned Walter Nolan as an interior defensive lineman to pair with Derek Brown. That makes a lot of sense to me. And then a couple of edge guys. Let's go with Shamar Stewart here, I've heard a lot of buzz about Shamar Stewart and Walter Nolan.
So for the first time in this mock draft, I'm going to go with the third player that you didn't mention, Jalen Walker out of Georgia.
Yep, that was the other
There
one I
has
was going
been
to say.
so much love for him from the Panthers. They absolutely love his football IQ. They love his downhill ability. They feel that he can be that presence at linebacker that they've been missing since Luke Kuechly, which that even includes the guy that they just parted ways with this offseason, Davis, Shaquan Davis, that who I'm thinking of. Anyways, they just parted ways with with their top linebacker for the past few years, and so Jalen Walker, that's the way I'm going. Edge rusher makes sense. If Mason Graham was there, I could see them going Mason Graham, even with all the additions they made to their defensive line room. But with how this board is, Jalen Walker is where I think the Panthers are going. There's been so much about Walker with the Panthers over the past month.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He was the other player I was going to say. I was also thinking about Mike Green here as another edge defender, as a true speed to power conversion edge rusher. Mike Green would make a lot of sense for the Carolina Panthers as well. To the New Orleans Saints, this is probably the next best Shedeur Sanders location that we have inside the top 10. If not, it's going to be a free fall for him unless somebody comes up and takes him. The Saints also have an issue with Derek Carr right now having a shoulder injury, and there's talk that this could be his last season if he doesn't even get to play this season for the New Orleans Saints. So Shedeur Sanders is going to be my top option for you guys here at the New Orleans Saints. And then getting over to NFL Draft IQ, we've got Mykel Williams, Jalen Walker, who just went off the board, Shamar Stewart, as well as another player that I like here. I'm going to give you three: Shedeur Sanders, Mykel Williams, or Shamar Stewart for the Saints.
Oh, it's tough because they can go multiple different ways, and I think ideally they're getting somebody to try to trade up here. I think that is their goal. They don't have a whole lot of picks. They definitely want to move down. They have been screaming from the rooftop that they want to move down, and it seems to be they want to move down and try to get Sanders later, but they want to stay above the Broncos. That's key for them. They want to move down, but stay drop no further than 19. With the options that you gave me, I think that there is one option that you could talk about that you didn't give me, in Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of love for him there about raising the floor of that tight end room that they have. Because they did bring back Juwan Johnson, but he's more of a big slot tight end instead of that inline tight end, and they don't have an option inline. And Kellen Moore, with his time with where he's been throughout, they've always had that threat as an inline tight end. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually going to stick with one of the guys that you gave me. I'm going to give them Mykel Williams.
Okay. Let me find him here. Mykel Williams is a big, powerful, bruising edge defender, great run defender out of Georgia. There's some upside as a pass rusher, but I still think that, honestly, like the baseline floor of the quality of a run defender that he brings to you coming out of Georgia is so highly valued, especially for this defense as a replacement for, dang it, what's his name? Cameron. I cannot remember his, dang it. Anyways, regardless, Mykel Williams, a great pick here. I like this fit a lot. I think Shamar Stewart would make a lot of sense here as well as a higher upside pass rusher. But let's move on to the Chicago Bears here. This makes a lot of sense to me for them to go and pair Tyler Warren with Cole Kmet. And then they also have Kelvin Banks Jr. as an offensive lineman for them. Makes a lot of sense. So let's go with those two guys, Tyler Warren and Kelvin Banks Jr.
So I've often talked about, the Bears and Omarion Hampton and combining, Hampton or Genty, if they were able to land him with Swift and give him that 1-2 punch there, like Ben Johnson had in Detroit. But another pairing they had was, I can't remember the inline tight ends name that they had, but they also had Sam Laporta as their slot. And a lot of people that I've talked with recently have really come out that, Tyler Warren can be an inline tight end. They like him more working out of the slot. I'm going Tyler Warren here to give the Bears that tight end weapon from there. Cole Kmet, he's more of that inline guy. He's definitely a good blocker, some receiving ability, pretty good receiver, actually. And he and Warren can really change the dynamic of that passing offense, which needs to be changed. And it would both really help out Caleb Williams, who needs a lot of help to take that next step.
Yeah. Adding another pass weapon to that offense and help Caleb Williams has to be paramount. I think that they can still address the offensive line and bring in a guy. Maybe it's Donovan Jackson in the second round if he falls that far. There's a handful of players. Tyler Booker would kind of make sense. I don't know if he's necessarily the best scheme fit there for them, but I mean, you could do that with a Ben Johnson offense running a little bit more power. So that makes a lot of sense to go with Tyler Warren here. For the San Francisco 49ers, I'm looking directly to the defensive line for these guys. Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, maybe Kenneth Grant here as well. I'm going to give you those three options for the San Francisco 49ers, and I really like Walter Nolan in this defense.
Yeah, I mean, making it simple, making it clean. They are an easy and quick San Francisco 49ers. They're really looking at boosting their offensive line or defensive line. One name that you didn't give me that I think is very much in the conversation here, Kelvin Banks out of Texas. A lot of teams love his versatility. They love him in zone. And there's been a lot of love for him out of San Francisco. But again, I'm going to go with somebody that you gave me. I'm going to give them Derek Harmon and have him go early. There's been some weird late medical issues with him that I've had a lot of people shoot down, but Derek Harmon, I think that he's going to still go somewhere in the top 17 picks.
Man, I love that versatility with him. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys here. I'm thinking Omarion Hampton or Teteroa McMillan. The Cowboys have been looking at running back heavily. It's a guy that Jerry Jones likes a lot, from what I understand. And then Teteroa McMillan as a pair to go along with CeeDee Lamb. I think that the way that they can work in tandem makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys here.
Yeah, this is going to be one that I'm going to go away from somebody that you gave me. But real quick, BK coming in and Harmon is good, but 11. A lot of people have him as the second defensive line in this class. A lot of people do. I am one of them. He doesn't have the character issues that Walter Nolan has. He doesn't have the medical issues, despite some weird reporting from today. So yeah, and I think that the 49ers would be a team that's willing to move back a little bit, but I think that they're a team that is definitely looking at defensive line. Kenneth Grant might end up being the pick for them, but I really like Derek Harmon for them a little bit more. And then for the Cowboys, I'm going receiver, but it's not Teteroa McMillan. Everything is that Jerry Jones is absolutely in love with Matthew Golden and keeping him in Texas. Born in Texas, raised in Texas, played at Houston, transferred to Texas. He stays in Texas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And he would work really well with CeeDee Lamb as well. On to the Miami Dolphins. My father-in-law has hand-selected a couple of players for me here. Will Johnson being one, Kenneth Grant being another. They want help in the secondary. I like Nick Emenwari here as well to the Miami Dolphins. So let's go Will Johnson and Nick Emenwari are your top two selections for me.
I'm going to go away from something you said. I'm going to go Jahdae Barron here and give them more versatility in the secondary, somebody who can do a lot more for them. He really fits the scheme that they're asking for. The medicals with Will Johnson do have some people scared away. If it was a little bit more clean there, then I'd probably be going Will Johnson, but I'm going Jahdae Barron for the Dolphins.
Yeah, inside-outside versatility, can drop back as a safety. A great zone coverage defender. In fact, the best zone coverage defender in college football last season, according to Pro Football Focus. I'm going to kind of pick it up here. The Indianapolis Colts on the clock. This is the biggest Colston Loveland destination in the draft, it seems like, since Tyler Warren has already gone. I also like Jahad Campbell here at linebacker to help fill out that linebacker room after moving on from EJ Speed. Those are your two options.
Yeah, I already made the pick.
It's Colston Loveland.
It's Colston Loveland. It's one of the worst kept secrets. There was a report that came out, I believe this week, might have been last week, about how the head coach really believes that adding that weapon at tight end could help unlock Anthony Richardson. And well, they get that guy and they're going to all be out of a job next year because Anthony Richardson ain't it.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a ton of sense there for Colston Loveland to go to the Colts at 14. Number 15, the Atlanta Falcons on the clock. Edge, linebacker, those are probably the biggest needs. Center is a good shout here. Wide receiver, according to Pro Football Focus as well. I like Jahad Campbell in this defense a lot, but I'm also going to give you Mike Green. Those are your two options.
Yeah, I'm going to go Mike Green because if I didn't, then Scott may fly to where I live and stab me. Scott absolutely loves him. On the morning shows, I tune in to Scott and Nick while I wait for Nick to finish up and join for Broncos for breakfast. And he absolutely loves Mike Green, and they need a pass rusher. They've needed a pass rusher for years, and they've always kind of neglected it. Everybody believed that they're going to go Dallas Turner last year, and then they go Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm.
If they pass on an edge rusher again this year, even if it's for somebody like Will Johnson, and they definitely need a corner, I think Atlanta Falcons fans are going to riot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you. To the Arizona Cardinals here, to me, the cornerback is probably the biggest need on this roster. They could use a linebacker, defensive line help as well, potentially another wide receiver to help round out that room. But I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the football here. Let's go with Will Johnson or Jihad Campbell.
This is a good one. They've struggled a bit with those, hybrid linebacker types, which Jihad Campbell is. But one thing that Jihad Campbell does is he does offer a lot more in coverage than we've seen with, Zavon Collins and some of these other hybrid linebacker edge tweener types that they've had. And then there is a belief that they like their corners a little bit more, especially their slot corner. But I'm going to give them Will Johnson because, hey, the guy that they like the most is their slot corner. I believe the guy out of Syracuse, I believe last year, is their slot corner. Can't remember his name, but they also got let down by their boundary corners at times, and they have some medical issues there as well, which might make them a little hesitant to take Will Johnson. But I mean, when he's on the field, he is such a clean technician. One of the better technicians I've watched in recent years. I would probably say he's, second or third behind Patrick Surtain in how clean of a technician they are. So Will Johnson for the Cardinals there.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I like what you just said there. Probably second or third best technician in terms of his footwork and his hand placement, especially in press coverage. He may not have the long speed, but Will Johnson is a very, very good coverage cornerback player and will translate very well to the NFL level. Let's get to the Cincinnati Bengals, number 17 overall. They need a guard. They need interior defensive linemen. My nephew Justin is a big-time Bengals fan, and I have to give him Kenneth Grant here. I think Kenneth Grant is one of the top options here as a nose that can work on their pass rush. But I'm also going to give you Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama, as the other option. So Kenneth Grant or Tyler Booker.
I'm going to go neither. I'm going to give them Kevin Banks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Kelvin Banks. Sorry.
Yep.
And just real quick, since we're running out of time here, Kelvin Banks there. We're going to give Gray Zabel to the Seahawks. That seems to be a terribly kept secret. And then I think the Buccaneers would rather have Jalen Walker, and then they'll settle for Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So those are players I was going to give you anyways for all three of those guys. We are at the Denver Broncos. We got about 10 minutes here to talk this through. Given the way that this board has fallen, the Broncos, obviously, they could go in the running back position. Omarion Hampton is still on the board. You've got Teteroa McMillan, who is a player I really like for the Broncos at number 20 overall. The number one, if you don't have Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, Teteroa McMillan is easily wide receiver 1 in this class with the highest floor of any player at the position. You've got Walter Nolan on the board. Luther Burden is a player that I know a lot of people like here in Denver. I like Donovan Ezaraku. We talked about him last week as a sleeper pick here for the Broncos, just to kind of help round out that edge room a little bit. Emeka Ibuka is still on the board here. That you can go in a lot of different directions here. So Eric, I'm going to let you take it away here, and let's talk about a handful of these guys.
I think Denver would love to trade down here, but we're not doing trades in this. I think that with the report of the Giants and the Browns having similar offers, offering their early second and third round picks on top of more to get back up in ahead of specifically the Steelers for Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart is really going to help them want to move down and try to get, Travion Henderson later, maybe Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Mason Taylor, and, just add a few more picks. One thing that has been constant from George Paton throughout this draft process, they love these middle rounds of this class, that day 2 picks. They absolutely love it. They feel that the guys that they're going to be that are there from 10 to 20 are pretty similar, and that the guys after that are still pretty similar. We're not doing trades though. And I'm going to go with the guy that if they don't trade down from here, who I fully expect to be the pick. It's not a guy that you and I are overly in love with, but it is a guy that seems to be, at the top of their wish list in Omarion Hampton.
I don't like you anymore. This is the end of Dove Valley Deep Divers. We're never doing this show again. No, it makes sense. I mean, There's some vision issues for sure, but on inside zone, on duo, if he does get to some daylight, he's got a very heavy forward running motion. He's a big back with good burst, good speed, long speed. If he needs to take it to the house, he can do that. I think that there's some issues with him, not necessarily with physicality, but he can get tripped up sometimes because he runs into defenders more often than not, and like it's very frustrating. I like the receive. Go ahead.
One thing with him is, yeah, I have serious issues with his vision, and I was actually just getting ready to talk about this. With vision, it is a bigger hindrance in zone coverage, and it is a big issue with me. And I've thrown Javonte Williams out there as a comparison simply because Javonte Williams is the guy that Broncos fans are most familiar with. But Omarion Hampton has much better vision as a runner than Javonte Williams does. Mm-hmm. They are in different classes. One thing that will help Hampton out is running duo, running gap concepts. Is vision isn't as necessary as it is in zone. You still want to be able to see those holes that open up that aren't in the path of the run, but with those types of runs, you can definitely you just follow the path of the run more. And BK saying that UNC bias out the window, please. It's not UNC bias. It's not. And that saying that it's UNC bias needs to be thrown out the window, taking what you're saying. It is just throwing a relevant comparison out there. I can give you a ton more running backs that are better comparisons for it. AJ Dillon from Green Bay is one of them when it comes to vision. Javonte Williams is the one that is used so often because of the fact that he is the one that Broncos fans are most familiar with. And after all, we are a Broncos show, and most people that are watching this and listening to this are going to be familiar with Javonte Williams. And so we're using that as kind of the barometer, even though Hampton is better with that. And Jason Bonnie's coming in saying, Hampton, love it. Great receiving skills for such a great big running back. Love it. You're a little bit higher on his receiving skills, but he is still a quality receiver. He could be he's not one of those guys that's going to line up outside. He's not going to line up in the slot. He has some quality route running when it comes to the stereotypical running back routes that he has, but he's good. And he's one of the better things about him as a receiver is he is quick to transition from receiver to ball carrier to go and pick up yards, keeps his legs churning. The burst is great. Burst is excellent. The balance is good. Like, he has a lot of traits that you do look for. And like, while I'm not a fan of him here at 20, and I have hounded on his vision a lot, and I've talked about how I'm not as high on him as other people are, it often has been taken as a fact that I absolutely hate the player, and I just want to make it clear that I don't hate the player, just not as high on him as some other people are.
I have a second round grade on Omarion Hampton. He's running back 4 for me, just like you. Although I have Travion Henderson with the injury issues as running back 2. Caleb Johnson is running back 3 for me. Omarion Hampton is a fine player, and I think that if you can figure out a way to work with the vision issues, there's a lot that you can work with here. He does really well running routes out of the backfield, especially on pivot routes. You can maybe even line him up in the slot if you wanted to, but there's some angle route options. There's some, and see, Erick just kind of brought it up. BK jumps in and says, if Travion Henderson didn't have the injury concerns, I'd take him all day at 20. I'm still considering at 20, even with the injury concerns. And I know that the foot issue is a big thing, especially with NFL teams, but you're talking about one of the most explosive runners in this draft class, one of the best receiving backs in this draft class, and arguably outside of Ashton Jeanty, the best pass blocking running back in this draft class. He fits everything that what Sean Payton wants out of his running backs in this offense. And to me, he makes more sense than Omarion Hampton. The injury concerns are very real, though.
And one thing, as Michael Tafoya comes in saying, I agree, Henderson is better than Hampton. The issue is the Broncos seem to be very clearly eyeballing a between the tackles runner, their Mark Ingram type back, more so than that receiving back. And it doesn't mean that they could shock everybody and try to trade up for 51 and get Henderson, or target LaQuint Allen later, or Brashard Smith, or Marcus Yarns, or any of those guys. But they seem to be wanting that power between the tackles runner more. And that isn't Henderson's game. So I think that with the foot injury is one of the reasons why that they view Hampton as the better player over Henderson. Also, they only drafted one player under Sean Payton that they brought in for a team 30 visit, Riley Moss. They did do a private workout with Bo Nix. That is not the same thing as a team visit. They brought in Travion Henderson, suggesting going off of Sean Payton's history throughout his whole coaching career, including the Saints, where he's only drafted like 7 or 8 players that he's at all, not just first round, overall. It seems that would suggest that they had more concerns about Henderson, probably with medicals that they just wanted to check out and maybe looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
And one last point before we go on this, and then we can kind of scatter up because we still have a lot of picks left. Still got Estime. How much, though? They may not be as sold on Estime as much. And then when you look at Sean Payton's running back history and what it is, you have your top running back who is a power back, or, you know, your 1A power back, your 1B receiving back, and then your third back is another power back. That is Estime's role. Limited blocker, limited receiver, short yardage guy, the short yardage pounder. That's Estime's role as the third back in this system. Now, going through these picks real quick, just got to go quick. We're going to go Shedeur Sanders here with the Steelers. We're going to go Kenneth Grant for the Chargers. They really want to improve that defensive line. The Packers are an interesting one, but at this point, I think it would be hard for them to pass up on a receiver. With the head coach having been with San Francisco, I think Luther Burden makes sense for them, but I think they'll end up overall with how this board fills. I think they'd go Tedroa McMillan. The Vikings, they've added to that defensive line, but they seem to really want to add another younger guy, a pass rusher type. So Walter Nolan there. When you get to the Texans, this gets interesting because you can go offensive line or pass rusher or offensive line or receiver. And one of the things that I think that they would absolutely love is, after trading Laramie Tunsil, is to improve that offensive line. Josh Simmons is widely rated as a higher prospect, but he's had a lot of character concerns about him. I think they would go Josh Connerly instead. Emeka Egbuka is one receiver who could crack in here. That has been a popular one. We get to the Rams, and this is where you can start seeing potentially Mason Taylor come up. I think that they have a lot of different ways that they would like to go, but I think this is the point where you start talking about Trey Amos. That seems like a match made in heaven right there. Baltimore Ravens, I know that one guy they would absolutely love to land is Nick Scourton. Detroit Lions, they can go a bunch of different ways with the way their archetypes that they like with their pass rushers. Donovan Izaraku. Washington Commanders, they're another team that can go a bunch of different ways. They can go edge rusher, they can go guard. I'm going to give them a guard in Donovan Jackson. Might be a little bit early, but he's a guy who's been rapidly rising over the past few weeks. Getting to the Bills here, one terribly kept secret here, and I mean, Shamar Stewart's still there, and a lot of what's going around with Shamar Stewart is he's either going to go early or he's going to fall to the late first round or second round. One of the two. If he doesn't go 8 or 9, then we're probably talking about him in the 30s or maybe even the 40s. I will give him to the Bills here, even though that there are a couple other ways they can go. They really like Tyreek Williams, big defensive lineman out of Ohio State. And then this is one that's going to surprise a lot of people. There's been a lot of buzz lately about Mason Taylor to the Chiefs as they look to replace Travis Kelce. I think that they would obviously like to go tackle here. They have no issues with character stuff. Like, they've made that abundantly clear, but I think that they're going to try viewing somebody who they can groom to replace Kelce, as he seems to be in his last year, and try to run it back a little bit with what they have at offensive line. And then with the Philadelphia Eagles, so many different ways, but you know, they love their Georgia Bulldogs, and I'm only giving to them because I think it goes in the first round. I'm just not entirely sure where with how this things went with this, so I'm going to give them Malachi Starks.
That was fast. I had a lot of things to say about that. I didn't follow through with that.
Unfortunately, we hit that hour mark. We spent a lot of time at the top talking about things. Didn't get into the mock draft until almost the 30-minute mark. And this is the thing: the Eagles, they really love to draft by the best player available. And Chiefs offensive line could definitely see it. Josh Simmons, but I was just going off of, a little bit of recency bias there with how much Mason Taylor talk has been going around with the Chiefs.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I like Mason Taylor there. That makes a lot of sense because obviously Travis Kelce last year, his deal, Mason Taylor still really young, still kind of raw, but with a good baseline and pretty much everything you want for a tight end, a young rookie tight end. Is going to take him a little bit to kind of get up to speed and whatnot at the NFL level. But you get that year to be able to work with him, help him grow a little bit better. I hate you for doing that. The other one I really like for them is Travion Henderson, because the speed out of the backfield, combining him with Isaiah Pacheco, just makes a ton of sense for me for the Kansas City Chiefs. There was another one. The Eagles. back to the Eagles here. BK saying the Eagles get another steal. Yeah. When Eric and I started talking about doing this earlier this week and running through these kind of situations, when I got to the Eagles, I had a handful of players. I'm like, this is that all of them make sense. So I wrote in the notes, take your effing pick. It doesn't really matter at this point because Howie Roseman is an effing wizard and he's going to find a way to land a steal. And we should all be better and be better like Howie Roseman because that dude is a master at the NFL draft. I love that for them. They moved on from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this season. You get Malachi Starks, who brings a lot of those same qualities. Maybe not quite as physical of a player as CJ GJ is, but I mean, it's a good fit for that defense. I'm going to get out of here though. I would just want to say thank you all. I don't have a whole lot left, Eric. Just want to say thank you all for joining us here on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. We definitely appreciate you guys joining in for the conversation. Didn't get a lot of the comments because we were trying to fly through this, but we all appreciate you guys for joining us. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos.
Yeah, real quick, giving a shout out. Papa Bear coming in with a $5 donation. We appreciate that. We appreciate BK and Jason Bonney also coming in with $5 donations. We appreciate you all. We appreciate the stars. Unfortunately, I didn't star them on our end, so I'm not able to see who all starred. But we appreciate you all as well. Michael Ronquillo, I'm sure that one of yours was stars, as it always is. And we appreciate all of your guys' support. Unfortunately, we weren't able to flesh out the conversation as much as we wanted to. We just talked a little bit more at the beginning, and with the way we were doing it, just led to a little bit more time. But we hope that all of you guys have a wonderful weekend. It's Easter weekend. Stay safe. Have fun celebrating that if you celebrate Easter. You will see me on Monday. You'll see me Tuesday night as we do our roundtable mock draft. You'll see me Wednesday morning, and you'll see me next Thursday night, Friday night, and pretty much all day on Saturday as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot of me. Hope you guys are used to my ugly face. But thank you guys a lot for your support and everything. But before we get out of here, we do have some matters of business here. And they changed things for me. They changed things on the back end. It makes it harder for me to see. All right. This is one of the Mile High Huddle podcasts. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Mile High Huddle. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. You can get access to all of our written content there. We are also on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with the underscore between Mile and High and Huddle. We are also on TikTok, although the handle of that I am not familiar with, don't know off the top of my head. If you guys can and are able to do so, support us financially, you can get a wonderful hat like the one that Lance is wearing, or wonderful shirts or coffee mugs or whatever thing at mhhmerch.com, where you can get your gear on, not merch. I absolutely hate the word merch. And of course, as always, you guys can go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some gear each month. Again, with the word swag, absolutely hate that word. But we want to thank you all for tuning in and joining us. I hope you guys had a wonderful Friday night. I hope you guys had a wonderful time joining us for this first round mock. Still on Volcano Watch, still waiting for it to erupt. And just waiting for that. With my luck, it'll probably happen at some point during the draft. Seriously. But again, we hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Hope you guys have a wonderful Easter if you celebrate. Hope you guys stay safe, stay sound, and to steal this from Nick, always choose kindness and compassion, and don't drink and drive. And of course, go Broncos. I will see you Monday morning. Have a good one.